Clint, we're finally talking about super soldiers. As a huge Bucky Barnes stan, I couldn't be happier.
Yes, Brigid, and speaking of stans and Bucky Barnes, do I even have to guess which Oscar-nominated actor is your fan cast for Kirin?
He's going to win this year, I just know it.
I don't think he's going to win.
No, hopefully Coleman Domingo, our other boyfriend, will win.
Yeah, agreed.
Push the button.
Hello, it's the Mercy of Pods, the world's first and only podcast about the Captives War series by James S.A. Corey. Every episode so far, we've done a recap and a close read of one part of The Mercy of Gods, the first novel in the series. But not today, my friends. No, not today. Today, we are going to hit the first half of the Captives War novella, Livesuit. Spoilers will abound for both pieces of literature, The Mercy of Gods and Livesuit. And I know what you, the listener, are thinking. You're thinking that the last time in the last episode, we told you that we planned to do a The Mercy of Gods wrap episode before we did Livesuit. Well, like Kirin planning to live the rest of his life with Mina, we changed our mind and decided to choose Livesuit first. We're still going to do a wrap episode, but it'll be after we do Livesuit, and maybe after the Livesuit live stream. We'll see. Not sure, but yeah, it's Livesuit, baby. We're doing it.
It's Livesuit. In the meantime, we're excited to start with coverage of the best novella I've ever read.
Wow, high praise.
At least in sci-fi. Definitely the best, let's amend that, the best sci-fi thing I've ever read.
Okay.
I forgot about A Rose for Emily. This first excellent TCW novella that we think answers a lot of open questions about the series. And despite the fact that Kirin mentions like 1,000 times in the story that timelines are meaningless, Clint still managed to put one together, didn't you?
I sure did. I'm glad you mentioned it. While Brigid, you were writing the summary of part 1 of Livesuit, I went through the whole story and put all of the parts of Kirin's story in chronological order. So I have a document. I'm going to put a link to the timeline in the show notes and probably post it on Reddit. Regardless, while I initially thought when I read through it the first few times that the story had a lot of convoluted jumping around, the actual timeline in the story is quite simple. The very first story part on the unnamed bridge planet that Brigid is going to start with is actually the beginning of the second half of Kirin's Livesuit timeline. The sort of back half. The second part that Brigid is going to talk about, where Kirin and Mina are hanging out on Caladan, that's the beginning of the first half of Kirin's story. And then it sort of switches off in entirely chronological order after that. Odd-numbered parts, if you will, are chronological in the second half. The back half, even-numbered parts are chronological in the front half. Sorry if this sounds complicated, but it's actually not. If you check out the timeline, it's very simple. The trick is that the unnamed bridge planet that we're going to talk about first is the bridge between the front half and the back half of Kirin's story. Everything after Kirin loses his foot is in the second half of the timeline. Everything before is in the first half, if that makes sense.
Sure does. Not at all confusing.
Yeah, sure.
This gets into something that's very important for writers, which is the difference between plot and story.
Yeah.
The plot is not that complicated, but the story is because of the time.
Yep.
Because time, and we're being told the story in this way because it reinforces that Kirin is also unstuck in time, much like Billy Pilgrim from Slaughterhouse-Five, if you remember that book from high school.
I do, as a matter of fact.
He's kind of like a demonic version of Billy Pilgrim.
Yeah, I could see that. It's also like sort of like a sci-fi horror version of Christopher Reeves in Somewhere in Time.
Haven't seen that.
Old romantic movie with Jane Seymour. It's good. You'd like it. It's
also kind of like a cyberpunk version of Time Cop starring Jean-Claude Van Damme.
I'm sorry, that's already a cyberpunk movie, but go ahead.
Don't forget to follow, rate, and review if you like us, both on the podcast apps and on the YouTube, which I'm trying to catch up posting.
Oh yeah, we have a YouTube.
We have a YouTube.
I have nothing to do with it. This is all Brigid, so. But you should check out the YouTube if you like YouTubes.
I'm really lazy, so if people don't like it, let us know and I'll stop doing it. On we go to the recap. The story opens on Kirin, our protagonist, contemplating that the structure he's been ordered to destroy isn't really a bridge. It looks like a bridge in a river, but it's actually a hive structure, like a coral, situated in a flow of hydrocarbons and bromine. It just reminds him of a bridge because there are only so many shapes available in the universe. He also notes that some aliens look like flowers and vulvas.
I am so here for the Captives War's future exploration of the pussy aliens. We will find out if they serve more than cunt. Sorry, I had to.
It's good. As Kirin ponders shapes, his suit alerts him of a change in target via a haptic. Instead of destroying the part of the bridge thing that's near them on the bank, they must destroy a part of the structure that is in the middle of the oil river. The team lead, Korval, asks for acknowledgement, and Kirin's team all verbally acknowledges, except one member named Piotr, who has been texting instead of speaking for months. Each team member's name shows on Kirin's heads-up display as they acknowledge. Kirin explains that Korval's suit will relay the accepted change to Command and Control, the central organization that gives their orders. Korval decides not to send up recon drones to scope the situation, and it turns out to be the right decision because the mosquitoes would have immediately given them away to the enemy.
So this is foreshadowing, or maybe sort of backshadowing, given the fact that it's referencing something that has chronologically already happened to Korval and Kirin, but we as the reader haven't read it yet, to the time on Lirabas, which happens in the back half of the story. We're going to talk about it next episode, where they land and they release the mosquitoes immediately upon landing, and right after they do, they get jumped by 2 Carracks who kill 3 of their group and smushify Piotr's head out of existence. So Korval has learned from this mistake, but the way that we're reading it, it's foreshadowing, right?
Yeah.
It's a neat little trick.
It is a neat little trick. I think that the time, that stuff where you don't know what time you're in, is a big part of the horror of this too.
Yep.
Learning from your mistakes is an important part of field leadership, and Korval is a good leader, making important decisions without command's guidance when needed. Kirin is in the lead of Team 2, who will wade into the oil river to plant the charges. He wants to map the river bottom, so he puts his hand, covered by the suit, in the water. More haptics indicate that the suit is scanning, and then it produces a map of the riverbed on the heads-up display inside Kirin's helmet. Kirin wades into the river, noticing its light yet greasy texture, all wrong for what he expects of a river. We, the readers, learn that Kirin can feel a remarkable level of detail through his suit, just like how Bucky can feel the plum's ripeness in his metal hand.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out.
That was my previous hyperfixation, and, old habits die hard.
Sure.
While he is waiting, a member of the team warns him of what we TMOG readers know is a rackhund, a car-sized centipede with bone legs. Kirin doesn't know what they're called, but knows they are one of 1,000 aspects of the enemy. Kirin sinks down in the river like a crocodile. He is aware of earth fauna like crocodiles, until the rackhund has passed. When his suit suggests a sedative for Kirin's elevated vitals, he rejects it to keep his edge.
Yeah, the suit is just keeps pushing drugs on them constantly, all the time.
Any sensation they have, the suit's like, drugs?
Yep.
It's another way in which Livesuit infantry is a lot like real-world armies. Tons of fucking drugs. The U.S. government found out amphetamines are addictive by handing them out like candy in World War II. With every movement Kirin makes, we're learning more about what the suit can do. Kirin makes his way carefully to the stanchion where the charge is supposed to go. He pauses too long in one spot, though, and something comes up from the riverbed to close its mouth around his ankle. The pain of his foot being crushed is almost unbearable. The suit anesthetizes it and stiffens around the crushed extremity, making an exoskeleton. The pain recedes enough that Kirin can stay conscious and act to extricate himself. He's unsuccessful, though, and the thing biting him starts to swallow his leg a little at a time. He tells Korval he's down as he sinks under the surface of the river. Like a slide carousel turning chaotically, the narrative jumps to a memory of when Kirin learned that his friend Piotr was signing up for Livesuit infantry. Kirin notes that time is unreckonable because of brain slip, the technology humans use for faster-than-light travel, and because of the light years between human settlements. It is either 8 years or 40 years since the conversation in question, or some other amount of time. Anyway, when he was 23 years old, he lived with his girlfriend Minna in a ski town on Caledon and worked as a paramedic with his buddy Piotr.
So Caledon is spelled differently, but the Atreides homeworld before they go to Arrakis in Dune is Caladan. Very close. It's probably a reference. I like to think that because these people in this story also know about like Christmas and the Olympics, that they're also big fans of the 1984 version of Dune, and they are still also sad about David Lynch. Rip David Lynch.
I like to think that the 1984 version of Dune is the only version that's survived.
Exactly. That's the canon version for these people. They're like, man, Sting was amazing.
In the memory, Kirin is drinking beer and having a cigar on a beautiful day off from work, but he's watching the terrible war news, doom scrolling, if you will. A solar system he's not familiar with called Alpena has been destroyed by the enemy. He doesn't know when it happened because the news has to travel thousands of light years to get to Caledon. The attackers, whoever they are, ignored the third planet in the system with its own fauna in order to slaughter 5 billion humans in the other 2 planets.
You mentioned the attacker, whoever they are, and one thing that this story makes super clear is at this point that Livesuit is being told, the humans do not know who the Carracks are. Certainly not regular civvies like Mina, they don't know, but even none of the soldiers or command that we hear about later mentions Carracks. And when we actually run into the 2 of them in the next episode on Lirabos, the word Carracks does not appear on Livesuit. Nobody mentions Carracks. This is one of the many context clues that this is, in my mind, certainly long before the events of the Mercy of Gods, where the great enemy, who we believe are humans or at bare minimum human or adjacent, not only know who the Carracks are and what they do, but they know that the Carracks have homeworlds and they know roughly where they are. The level of intelligence that the humans have in the Mercy of Gods and do not have in Livesuit could not be more different.
I totally agree. And I keep thinking about how long this war is and how humans are endurance hunters.
Yep.
And like the thousands of light years, the length of time, like thousands of light years means it takes light 1,000 years to get between the things, right?
Literally true, yes.
Thanks. So, just quick refresher. So that means that their empire has been around for at least 1,000 years. The human empire has been around for at least 1,000 years when we're telling the beginning of Kirin's story.
That's right.
And the war has been going on for Kirin doesn't know how long. And yeah, anyway, we're talking millennia here, people.
There are some context clues in the next episode that indicate that this is still relatively new in the war. Like this is maybe a generation or 2 out, or at the beginning.
Super long for a human war, or
correct.
A regular Earth war. The enemy coalesced out of the vacuum, but the experts don't know how. Kirin figures if they understood the enemy, they might be winning. Much like on Ajian, the enemy rounded the humans up in pens, chained neck to neck and leg to leg. Not just killing, but subjugation as well. Kirin despairs that this is one in a string of attacks that no one seems to understand or be able to prevent. The newsfeed assures him that the central government will respond decisively. Sure. Mina, his girlfriend, chats with Kirin a bit before leaving for her job as a hospice nurse for an old man. Mina tells Kirin it's better for her to be with Mr. Bulsara than for his family. They knew him before when he was more alive, and she only knows him the way he is now, on the home stretch before death, so-called. Kirin says he thinks her job requires more strength than his. His patients have happy endings sometimes. Mina says her job is easier because she's not delaying the inevitable. In the end, Kirin will lose. They're going to die eventually anyway.
This is very prophetic, but it's also a nice little inversion of Mina and Kirin's future interaction in the back half of the story where they talk about silent horses. Because in that interaction, Mina knew Kirin in the way back when he was not a soldier. Whereas all of the soldiers, minus Piotr, only knew Kirin when his fate was already sealed by being in the suit. So I just like that sort of inversion.
I also just thought of this, that his last relationship before he takes on the suit is with a hospice nurse.
Oh, fuck. Well, that's some foreshadowing too, ain't it?
These guys are good at this.
Yeah.
Also, Kirin is the only one who knew Piotr before he enlisted.
Right.
And he keeps knowing him after. Speak of the devil, as Mina is leaving, Kirin's friend Piotr arrives. Piotr is slim with a face suited to his pencil mustache. I picture Errol Flynn, although Gomez Adams would also work.
I also prefer Gomez, who's the second greatest fictional lawyer of all time, behind Vincent LaGuardia Gambini. Though my real casting for Piotr, and we talked about this, is Jack Houston, who played Richard Harrow from Boardwalk Empire, for obvious reasons for anybody who has seen Boardwalk Empire. But yeah, he would be perfect for Piotr.
He would. He also would look great with a pencil mustache.
I agree.
Kirin cannot remember how they met, but when they started working together, that's when they became close friends. They've saved lives and watched people die together. Kirin knows Piotr so well that he can tell just from his expression that something is different. Piotr confesses that he is quitting the mobile medical team, and Kirin is agog. Quote, he could have said he decided to become a sparrow. It would have made as much sense. Unquote. But perhaps Piotr has found a position with as much outdoor time as mobile medical and fewer dead bodies? No, exactly the opposite. Piotr has enrolled in the Livesuit infantry. They share a little inside joke about a beer, the open sky, and all the paperwork you can eat. Where Piotr is going, he will have no beer, no sky, and no paperwork. Piotr is firm in his decision, though, because in case Kirin hadn't noticed, the enemy is winning. Kirin is like, well, it's hard to tell, because how long have we even been in this war, and how do we know we're losing? But Piotr says it's pointless to save lives here when the enemy could just come along and kill them all anyway, which is kind of what Minna just said. Kirin argues, although she was like, it's pointless to... I don't know what she's just like, everyone dies eventually.
Yeah, she was just saying, like, in the end, death always wins, right? But
yeah. And trippy. Kirin argues that the central government seems to have a plan, but Piotr rejects this. They just want to make sure we don't panic.
Contrast this to head-smashed Piotr later, who trusts command and control entirely. Just pointing that out.
The only way Piotr sees to make a difference is to join up. He'll be in for 8 years subjective, but also acknowledges that even after his tour is over, he won't really be back. It won't be the same. After Piotr leaves, Kirin stays up for a long time, thinking, drinking beer, and listening to the music of his youth. He makes dinner for himself and Minna, and when she comes home, he eats and they talk. Her patient died well. When he tells her about Piotr's decision, she shudders. They agree it sounds awful. Minna goes to bed and Kirin smokes another cigar on the balcony. He remembers that soldiers in live suits don't smoke because they don't take their helmets off, which is the first time we learn that they don't take their helmets off.
Right.
He can easily imagine his own planet being invaded by the enemy.
It's a nice little storytelling device that they end this scene here, and they don't explain precisely why Kirin changed his mind or how the conversation with Minna went when he told her. We can all imagine how brutal it must have been, but I again like that choice that it's just sort of left to the imagination.
Yeah. With the turn of the carousel, we come back to Kirin in the oil river, where he's trying to stab or cut the monster eating his leg. The suit tries to help, giving his arm extra oomph as he swings his knife. As the thing mutilates his limb, he knows he's losing his leg, but the suit has him so full of adrenaline and analgesics that it doesn't feel urgent. He's under the surface of the oil river, but the suit is feeding him oxygen like always. It could keep him alive for half a day with no outside air if it needed to.
Just want to put a pin in the capabilities of the live suit to keep him alive and breathing underwater. Just remember that.
The team is still connected and talking, but he's not paying much attention. He gets disoriented, but the suit still knows which way is up. This is so scary, like, while you're reading it.
Right.
The first time, like, that's what happens when you're, like, underwater, is you lose your sense of up, and then you drown.
It's fucking terrifying, like, not just being eaten, but I don't know, I have a lot of sort of, I don't want to die in this particular way, but being eaten by something underwater is really high up on the list. And this, the first time I read this, I was like, fuck, man, this is rough. Being
unable to reach the surface is a top 5 nightmare for me.
Sure.
The suit keeps his arm moving to saw at the monster's jaws with the knife. As the monster is swallowing Kirin's leg, Gleaner and Ross come to his rescue, holding him up and cutting the thing's jaws off him. It is described as looking like tree roots with teeth, which is wondrous creature building. The mission is ending, and they need to retreat to the evac harnesses, but a bunch of enemy aliens are in pursuit, and Kirin's leg is destroyed. Kirin volunteers to cover the team with his rifle while they retreat, even though Korval tells him not to, but he's like, my gun still works. The suit has also turned his leg into a peg leg that he can sort of run on. He gets close to the evac harnesses, which are, this is a quote, like the shells that cicadas left behind, but built from titanium and larger than a human body, end quote.
Thank you for that quote, Brigid. Here's a quote from the Mercy of God's Trap Battle chapter from Ayaya and a Kurta Klalt describing the battle and the evacuation of the fivefold enemy in escape pods from detonated ships. This is a quote. Traveling in the skin of that detonation, hundreds of escaping enemy wrapped in shells of titanium and deep copper fled death and found captivity. Now, Brigid, if you, as an author, which you are, were writing a story wherein you intended to signal to the reader that these two entities, in two different stories, are connected, if not, the fucking same, would say putting them both in escape pods, which are, quote, shells of titanium, in two different places, something you might consider doing in order to draw that connection between the two.
I tell you what, if I put two titanium shell pod scenarios in my story, I would have to be incompetent for them not to be connected.
That's what I think. I agree. I don't think J.S.A is incompetent. That's what I'm saying. I'm going to go on record with that. You may quote me. J.S.A, not incompetent.
Bold words.
Clint, the mercy of pods.
From there, Kirin uses the suit's aiming assistance to come attached from time. This is the line that first reminded me of Slaughterhouse-5, and focus on shooting the aliens. At the last second, he turns and runs for his evac harness, noticing that his leg feels like a prosthetic with nerves. He gets in his harness and lets it take over, carrying him to the dropship. He compares himself and his team to luggage, because they're objects.
Yep.
Via the text channel, because he doesn't speak anymore, Piotr congratulates the good guys on their win. Did they win? Are they good guys? When they're evacing, Kirin doesn't even know if the bridge is still standing.
Yeah. There's also a bit here where Kirin tries to read a display that gives him information as to how far they've gone, but he can't make any sense of it because the suit is like flooding him with drugs and chemicals as a result of his injured leg. And I don't know. This could just be sort of foreshadowing that the suit isn't totally benign. It could be just another example of the suit forcing drugs on you. But I think it could also maybe indicate something that the suit sort of needs a major injury like the one that Kirin just sustained to really start to take over a soldier's brain.
Yeah, I think if you somehow got through the war with no injuries, it wouldn't have any chances to incur into you.
Yeah.
Other than the standard points of connection. Mm. It's possible that the suit taking over is an unforeseen but welcome side effect in the eyes of command and control, I think. Mm-hmm. Okay, our photo carousel spins again, and we land in, which if you don't know what that is, just watch Mad Men. We land in Livesuit infantry intake training. It's just awful. It's 12 weeks long and involves physical training that sounds borderline impossible, followed by tactics lectures with must-pass tests every night and a little 5-hour nap before getting up to do it again.
One of the things that they make you do is swim a lap back and forth in a, quote, Olympic-sized swimming pool without taking a breath. So Olympic-sized pools are 50 meters long, so that's 100 meters all in, which is just fucking ridiculous.
I was on the swim team in high school, the JV swim team, and we had one varsity swimmer who could do this, and he was preparing for Olympic trials. Yeah. So they're expecting every Livesuit soldier to have Olympic swimmer like Michael Phelps, not that crazy, but Olympic swimmer lungs. For no reason.
But the thing that strikes me is, as we learned on the last little bit on the Bridge Planet, where I told everybody to put a pin in it, it's holding your breath is completely unnecessary for Livesuit soldiers to ever have to do. They don't have to hold their breaths. The suit breathes for them, and they can do it underwater. So why are they making them do this? What is the point? Okay,
also, there is a point at which having too lean of a body or too muscular of a body becomes inefficient. You are then burning more calories. If your muscles are too crazy, then you're burning more calories than you would be without. So your body's actually less efficient than if you were, maybe it's not lean muscle, but too many muscles or too big of muscles.
It's I've heard that Olympic gymnasts have to drink 12 beers to even feel a buzz or something like that.
It doesn't surprise me at all.
Right, because they're just their metabolism is insane.
They're the real super soldiers.
Yeah.
For reference, Marine boot camp is also 12 weeks, and it's about half physical training and half instruction. Marine recruits get 6 to 8 hours of sleep and an hour or 6 to 8 hours to sleep. I can't control whether or not they do. And an hour of free time on Sundays. They do not have to swim the length of a pool and back without taking a breath. And this is the hardest boot camp in the U.S. military. And this is a boot camp for them. This isn't special. This isn't like Army Ranger School or Navy SEAL training where you've already been in. A lot of the other recruits have already been in, but for Kirin, this is his first boot camp. Crazy. Piotr is with Kirin in the same intake group. Kirin describes the other recruits, including Ross, who Kirin ends up deploying with and who he has a boner for. Kirin describes the group as sinners washing away their sins, to which I say, what sins? The sin of being human? Very Catholic. At this point in training, Kirin and the others are gathered in a classroom to finally be introduced to the Livesuit itself. Sergeant Huang walks in the first Livesuit Kirin has seen in person. The suit is sexy as fuck. It's like off-white snake scales that move fluidly with Huang's body, a second skin and musculature. Kirin is super impressed despite the lame camel hump on the back that has all the fluids and waste treatment system. The suit has the ability to change its color for camouflage, and the helmet is flexible yet bulletproof with an opaque faceplate. Huang's lecture begins with a challenge. Will the recruits stay the course or turn tail and run back to their nurseries? Kirin recognizes that Huang is a salesman and they are being manipulated. He doesn't dwell on it, though, as Huang goes on to explain how the Livesuit differs from typical exoskeleton armor. It is made of a dense weave of fibers that hug tight to the human body underneath, protecting and strengthening among other things. The suits will be bonded to the recruit's skin. The bond is semi-permanent.
Sure.
And Sergeant Huang assures them that they won't even notice it eventually. The suit will be their food, their lungs, and their senses. It will keep them in 24/7 contact with their team, and it will keep them fighting even while incapacitated. Okay, super great advanced technology, but what's the point? Don't worry, Sergeant Huang has an answer for that too. The suit allows humans to fight in any environment from no oxygen to no gravity. It turns you, quote, it turns you into the kind of soldier that can fight the war we're fighting. Next, Huang tells them that they're going to have to give up a lot for their chance to don a Livesuit. Everything, from the touch of another to the taste of fresh air. They'll have neither privacy nor human connection. They will not bathe or shit. But Huang assures them they won't miss it. And when it's time for the suit to come off, they won't want their tour to end. So let's just sum it up. To win this war, they have to give up everything that makes them human. That's the kind of soldier they need. One that doesn't have anything human about them.
So my question is, does Huang know that everything he is saying is bullshit? Because I kind of think he does. And I think he's basically a murderer who is enticing all of these people to put on suits that they will never be able to take off. And he's got to know because he's got one on too.
Is he introduced when they're talking about their training? Is he like their drill sergeant?
No, not at all. He's a Livesuit soldier.
So he's basically a recruiter, and military recruiters are known for promising almost anything to get people to sign up.
Yep.
I also think it's interesting that Huang is a sergeant. That's an enlisted rank, and so sergeants aren't people who like went to officer training or officer candidacy school or whatever it's called.
Okay.
Yeah. So I wonder if there's any commissioned officers in Livesuits, because a commissioned officer is that's like the management level of the military.
Okay.
Lieutenants and above. And if like sergeants are kind of like the floor supervisor or whatever, and they have way less connection to or way less knowledge of the overall plan, and they're lower in the rungs and usually they could come up from a private. So that makes me I just feel like there's no officers in Livesuits because it'd be a waste of an officer.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Ross, the one that Kirin has the hots for, asks a pretty important question. Why do they need people if the suits are so great? Huang, having rehearsed for exactly such a question, pulls out a sleeve of Livesuit material and puts it on the table. He tells it to push the box off the table, and it makes a really pathetic little attempt. It needs bones. Huang gives it 6 sticks to use as bones, and with that structure, it is able to push the box no problem.
So this may be nothing, but our podcast is about basically like parsing this text for things that may be connections. So there are some parts of the story that indicate that numbers that are mentioned are important. So for example, the Carricks are associated with the number 8, and they have 8 of everything. The humans are associated with 10, or at least the great enemy has fleets of 10 fighters that attack at Ayaya. And then speaking of Ayaya, Steph, my girlfriend, pointed out that the 6 sticks that he throws down is kind of Ely coded. The Ely are the natives of Ayaya. They're described as 6-limbed hexapods. I think it also might be notable that the thing that the sleeve turns into with the sticks is described as a 5-jointed digit, or dactyl, maybe. And a 5-jointed thing, well, that could remind someone of the fivefold enemy, maybe. I don't know. I drew that connection the first time I heard it, so we'll see.
5 and 10 are pretty important numbers to humans since we count everything with our dactyls, of which we have 5 on each limb.
Yep.
Huang does not give the material a brain. It's able to do the box pushing without a brain. He tosses a stick to Ross, who catches it easily. Huang says this demonstrates the lightning-fast processing time of a human brain, between the eye and optic nerve to the hand that catches the stick and the minuscule time the stick was in the air. Bing, bang, boom. Huang says the human brain is better than the most advanced computer than they can come up with. The Livesuit's physical ability plus human brain computing power plus the evolutionary advantages of the human body configuration equals a super soldier that can actually fight this enemy.
Yeah, I want to put a pin in Huang tossing the stick to Ross, because I think Ross catching the stick is foreshadowing something we will talk about in the next episode. But just remember that. I will call back when we get there.
I can't wait. Whoop-ow! We crash back into the slip boat. Oh my gosh, I just lost my place in the document, of course. I whoop-owed too hard.
Sounds like my prom night. Boom!
I'll never get tired of that joke.
Yeah, me neither. Literally.
Okay, we're back in the slip boat where Kirin is at the medical scanner. He finds its readout eerie, and so do I. Blue is human, and black is the suit. The scan shows all his muscles, veins, and bones in shades of blue in so much detail that Kirin could almost see his toenails, which he hasn't actually laid eyes on since he put on the suit. Before the battle, his left leg was all blue, but now the black of the suit has overtaken his left foot and climbs in tendrils up his leg almost to his knee. The suit is growing into his leg, building a foot and ankle out of suit fiber where once it had been flesh.
Not creepy at all. That's totally normal. That's cool.
Worse, this is the point where I was like, I'm so scared. Worse still, this isn't the only place where black has replaced blue, where the suit had grown into him. There are standard points of conjunction in his epidermis. There is a strand of black leading to his liver where he was shot, which, okay, there is no way, like when they were like, the suit can heal you, I am sure they meant the suit will put human flesh back there somehow, or like make you heal quicker or whatever. I'm sure they didn't make it clear that you're going to be part Livesuit from now on.
So if you get stabbed, right, into the liver, that maybe punctures your liver, when you heal, it's not like there's a hole there that it gets, sort of healed over and you can still see the inside of your liver at the end of the hole. No, it's like the flesh grows in and it closes up and everything's fine. If the Livesuit were benign, that's kind of what it would do, I would think. But no, it's like, no, I'm just going to fill in that hole, which is fucked up.
Yeah. Don't like that. Also, he's missing 2 of his vertebrae. Kirin tries to wiggle his dead toes and nothing happens. Ross comes over while he's finishing his scan, and he says that now he can kick the enemy without feeling it. He knows Ross has similar incursions of suit material. Quote, the scars of a Livesuit soldier weren't like other people's.
And how? My God.
Very accurate to military-type people pride in the way their bodies are mangled. Kirin mentions that the prosthetics will be replaced with civvy versions when he gets out. No big deal. Yes, big deal, buddy. Ross had come over to tell Kirin to get ready for brain slip, a habit from her days in the Navy when she and her fellow sailors had to give each other information directly instead of getting it from their HUDs, like peasants. Kirin reflects that even though he hasn't seen Ross's face since they put on their suits, he still finds her vaguely attractive. He hasn't had an erection or even much in the way of sexual thought since their tour began, so his attraction is kind of a phantom limb.
It's like a ghost boner. Yeah.
He doesn't have any animal cravings anymore except to sleep. He does feel kind of queasy, though, about the image of his not foot on the scanner, but he doesn't have time to worry about it. There's a mission to go on. Kirin heads for the brain slip chamber where he will spend the passage. His suit informs him that he has a personal message waiting. He gets to the room where the slip chambers are and sees Piotr is already in his, arms at his side, face hidden by the opaque shield. Earlier they were described as looking like sarcophagi. Kirin does all the routine safety checks of his chamber, not trusting the regular crew of the ship to have it done correctly. When he's finished, he lies back and the suit goes stiff as it begins to exchange its fluids and clean itself internally. He couldn't move the suit if it didn't want to move.
I get that impression, yeah.
I think that's a little thing for us to notice about this passage. It feeds him muscle relaxants and euphorics for the trip. Nice and high. Flexerol and Molly together would be fucking crazy. You would be feeling so great.
You texted me earlier something about Molly.
Candy flipping?
Yeah.
I would want to be rolling so hard on Molly.
If you were in the military.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
For sure. It's like, yes, give them drugs. Give them whatever they want. Okay, nice and high, Kirin switches to private and checks his messages. The video is from Mina. She's much older than he remembers, another reminder of the relative nature of time. It's also a reminder that he's fighting for her to be able to grow old. This is who he's sacrificing for, and seeing her grown old makes him feel like he's won. Her message seems quite anodyne. She hopes her message gets through the censors, and she says she came across an entertainment feed that they had watched together, called Silent Horses. She says it stars Karam Al-Shim and Margaret York, and they used to watch it at Christmas. Mina reminisces that they were good together. Then there's a redacted portion that didn't make it past the censors. Last, Mina says she understands why Kirin joined, and that she only ever wanted what was best for him and Piotr. The message is warm and wistful.
So it's worth noting that at this point, right before Kirin goes into brain slip, that even though he's high, Kirin is referring to Mina by her correct name, which is Mina, and later he will not. And it's actually very close in the timeline. Basically, right after he goes through the brain slip, he will start calling her Mira.
This is, I think, the only actual depiction of brain slip is this brain slip. Like, the only brain slip he describes in this novella is this one.
I think
that
that's
he's
right.
about to go on. And then other times he's just dropping from a ship that's already made the passage.
Yeah.
Kirin is fairly high at this point, but he's pretty sure he's never seen Silent Horses. He messages Piotr to check if he remembers watching it with them. Piotr types back, quote, "You'll have to remind me." No, I'm not doing that. Quote, "You'll have to remind me. It's been a lot of time."
So I think that the command and control intern who is speaking for Piotr has like a magic 8-ball or one of those old soundboards, and he just sort of cycles through Piotrisms. And this is one of his like most hit ones. "You'll have to remind me. It's been a very long time." Love that.
Yeah. He has, just some auto replies set up in the text channel. Our little slide carousel rotates again, and we're on Kirin's group's first drop after intake, where he met Corval. They're about to be dropped in Lapis City, which has already been overrun with alien soldiers. Here we learn that Kirin's training group did not all deploy together. He is with Sam 1, Piotr, and Ross, huddled together in the prep room, quote, "the way humans had probably done since they first descended from the African trees," unquote.
I was so glad that you pulled this quote because I was going to pull it if you didn't. This is the one and only time in the narrative so far that a place on Earth is explicitly mentioned. No one on Ajian mentions Earth, of course, except for the word Earth for soil, and that's because they don't know about Earth because they've been set off into the ether as bait. But it does mean the rest of humanity, aka Kirin and Mina and Piotr and Caledon and everybody who they're connected with, is familiar with Earth and the origin of human life, which is in Africa. So
they have fucking Christmas.
Yeah, they have Christmas and Olympics. So these are people from Earth. But it was something that I was combing through this narrative to find like a thing that made it clear that these people knew what Earth was, and this is the one thing that for sure it's there. So all of these people who are connected in this entire human empire, colonial empire, are from Earth. That's what I'm saying.
They're not just from Earth, they're from America.
America, baby. The land of the free.
I guess technically the Olympics is global, but they're whatever.
Christmas is American. We know that.
Christmas is an American holiday. We all know that.
Yeah.
We also learn that Kirin's last name is Foss, not Kirin. The group is waiting in a prep room when Simeon, their commanding officer, introduces himself, and Esteban Corval, Group 2 leader. Jefferson Mays' pronunciation of Esteban is so scrumptious.
Esteban.
This is the position Kirin was in the attack on the bridge thing. He was Group 2 leader. Kirin notes that when his group says, "Sir, yes, sir," it is like they're one mind with 4 bodies. Simeon says that the mission should be a cakewalk, but they still need to keep their heads on a swivel or some other military jargony stuff. The team, consisting of Simeon, Gleaner, Ross, Kirin, Piotr, Jones, Hamza, and Corval, boards an old dropship from before the current war. Love that even in the future, the military is like, you can have this old shit, it's fine.
Yeah, so that's one of the context clues. I forgot to mention this, but that's one of the context clues that this is early in the war, right? Because it's from before, it's pre-war, right?
Yeah.
And it's still operational.
Yeah.
It's not, it hasn't decayed. And look, I don't know, it's future technology and blah, blah, blah. But like modern times, if you're using if you're using something that's more than, obviously in modern times, if you're using something that's more than 5 years out of date, you're pretty much fucked. But call it, if you're in a sort of global war, you're maybe going back 20, 30, 40 years. Technology's different back then, but the upshot is if they're using pre-war shit, it's early in the war. It just has to be.
Okay, so the USS Nimitz was launched in 1972 and decommissioned in, oh my gosh, why doesn't it just say it at the top of the Wikipedia? Damn you. They didn't take it out of service until like 2012.
Okay.
So you could be looking at something a few decades old, like you said, but it's not going to be thousands of years old.
It's like 50 years old, right? So
yeah, not even 100.
Yeah.
And I think space travel is probably a lot harder on a ship than water travel.
Well, right. I don't know. I mean, so if it's a drop ship, that means it's going into atmosphere, right? It's not going on the brain slip. It's not. It's a drop ship.
Yeah.
So that's gonna go. That's gonna really wear on a ship, I would think.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not, a scientist or whatever, but yeah. So if they're using a drop ship from the current war, then it's probably taken a lot of beating so far.
Yeah, and I think this is another example of how disposable the Livesuit infantry is to command and control, because it's like, I forget the name of the helicopter that's always, it's like the Chinook helicopters are always just falling out of the sky that drop Marines into, they call these guys soldiers, but I think they're really more like Marines.
That makes sense.
Anyhoodle, so they're getting on this old ass boat, and yes, Kirin and Corval are the first to strap in. Corval greets him with a mix of warmth and foxhole humor. He says he's on his 13th operation, but he isn't sure how long he's been in. He says one woman he spoke to had over 200 missions. Corval says she got reassigned because command likes to shift people around, but sometimes you end up sticking with people, like how Corval and Gleaner have been together.
So I have an extremely quarter-assed theory on this. So Corval mentioning that him and Gleaner had been together perked up my ears a little bit, because that's sort of a Livesuit couple. And I had this theory, I don't know that I buy it now, but I'm just throwing it out there, that the Livesuit couples that we see mentioned a few times. So we've got Kirin and Piotr, we've got Corval and Gleaner. Later we meet Santos and Micah, are like one Livesuit guy who is alive, and then one who is like remote controlled. That's clearly true for Kirin and Piotr, and is maybe true for Santos and Micah, because Santos seems like maybe, I don't know. But I don't think, after rereading, I don't think it's actually true for Corval and Gleaner, who come in, they stay together for a long time, but they're actually split up at the end when Micah and Santos come in. Gleaner stays with Kirin and Piotr. And also, Gleaner seems kind of too funny to be an intern 8-ball. He cracks a lot of jokes later. I think the same of Corval. Corval, calls Kirin fuck ugly and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. It just doesn't feel interny. So I'm not sure how I feel about this theory, but
boy, I feel bad for the interns that work with you.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, interns are obviously too stupid to be this funny.
Yeah. Dude, you have probably not met legal interns. It's not that they're stupid, that they can't be funny. That's not the problem. They're just not funny.
Okay. I don't feel as bad for them now.
Yeah.
Because unfunny people can go to hell.
Yeah, I agree.
Also, Gleaner and Corval seem to have a much deeper connection than two random Livesuit soldiers. Like, Gleaner gives Corval a little, pouch of mementos when they get split up.
Yeah.
And when Gleaner gets... Wait, who gets killed? I thought Gleaner was one of the...
No, it's Hamza, Jones, and Simeon who get killed.
Oh, that's right. Because, Corval takes that pretty hard.
Yeah.
So, Gleaner. Is he a bot? We're not sure. Kirin wonders if they mix people up because fighting changes people, and it's probably easier when you don't know what someone was like before, like Mina said. Corval says no one can know why command does what it does, which is another very soldier on the ground kind of attitude. Corval says he likes Simeon, and so far they haven't gotten killed under him. Kirin is like, I thought we couldn't die in this suit. Aren't we like cockroaches? Craval says, quote, you ever stomp on a roach? Dies like everything else.
Ha ha. Surely this isn't prophetic. No.
No, it's just a reference to X-Men 1. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't actually get it.
When Storm's like, you know what happens to a toad when he gets struck by lightning?
Oh, okay.
Same thing that happens to everything else. It's a oft-hated line.
I thought it was a Kafka reference, but I don't know.
All cockroach references are Kafka references.
Right.
Okay, I'm having a lot of fun with this horror story about space. With that, they are counting down to the drop. Kirin's heads-up display shows him the mission map, and Simeon explains their task, to reach Otaki Square and clear it. Kirin has a million questions, but acknowledges their orders like everyone else. They drop, and it's a rough landing. Piotr makes a joke about it in the text channel to Kirin, who jokes back, and Piotr chuckles out loud.
Out loud, Brigid.
Out loud!
He's talking. Just saying.
Notice him talking with his voice, with his jaw. Kirin describes the city that they're supposed to march through as looking like the ruins of an ancient empire. He's talking about the destruction wrought by the enemy, but it made me wonder, how long has Lapis City been there? How old is the human empire? And what happened to the species on this planet when humans came?
These are totally fair questions, and I think that they're ones we're supposed to consider. We've been talking all along about how conquest and civilization are inevitably destructive. It's definitely a theme of the work, what with the weeding and the breaking of the tree limbs and whatnot. And the Carracks are explicit about their aims, and we aren't. Both of us engage in colonization, which necessarily causes the destruction or killing of other species. And I think we're supposed to think, holy shit, this human empire has how many systems? We like countless, right? So many.
Fucking lot of systems. Kirin hasn't even heard of them all.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. That's like, I've never fucking heard of that. We're talking thousands of systems, so thousands of planets that they have overtaken, and they have to have killed off, anything that was threatening to them in the local population, the local fauna, flora. They have to have done it on all of these systems. That's a lot of discovery and destruction. And I don't think we're supposed to just be like, yay, humans, we did it. I think we're supposed to, look at that and be like, shit, that's a lot.
Even if they were trying their best not to cause destruction, they would still. Like, when you land, every step you take, you're destroying a civilization.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's also worth noting here, and you mentioned that the Lapis City and Otaki Square, whatever it is, Otaki Square, not Otoki. Lapis is it's lapis lazuli. It's a semi-precious stone that's popular in Persian cultures. There are places called Lapis or Lapis City here in in the world.
The United States of the world.
The United States of the world. Yes, that's right. Otaki is the name of cities in Japan and New Zealand, and I think, based on my weak ass Googling, Otaki means sort of many happiness in Japanese. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Point is, it's an Earth place name, and I think that's intentional. Like, we are just like, no, this is where we took over whatever this name of the system. We're not given the system, but it's Lapis City. It's Otaki Square. These are places that seem familiar because they're human.
Yes, these folks also have regular human names.
Yep.
Whereas a lot of the names of the Ajanese are not distortions, but like you can see like the game of telephone of them being super far removed from the name that they probably came from.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Kirin notices smoke in the air. Quote, at the thought, his suit began displaying atmospheric data. At the thought.
Yeah, surely a coincidence that right at the thought, the suit began doing what it was telling him to do.
It's not in his brains. Aliens come at them as soon as they approach the city, hordes of scary creatures totally unlike the Earth-based beings Kirin knows and loves. He loses himself to his training and the violence and to the camaraderie of battle. Eventually, the team is successful. Quote, by the time they reached Otaki Square, he'd forgotten to wonder why they'd come. And that is where we will leave off until the next episode.
Yeah. So you mentioned previously at the very beginning of this episode that you thought that this was the best sci-fi short story that you had ever read.
It might be like my favorite sci-fi anything I've ever read.
It's real good. It's not mine. We're going to cover mine in a little bit, but
Is it because yours is Oberon?
it's Oberon. But I wanted to hear why you liked it so much. Yeah.
You know when you're in high school and your English teacher assigns a short story that haunts you for the rest of your life?
Yes.
And it's like the ending, you're just like completely gobsmacked.
Hills Like White Elephants. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Hills Like White Elephants, A Rose for Emily, The Lottery. Like there's so many that like horror just fits into short fiction so beautifully. And I mean, Hills Like White Elephants isn't horror, but it is horrifying in many ways.
Yeah.
And I love sci-fi horror. I love being scared and things that can make you feel that like stomach churning, oh my God, everything is different than I had assumed till now. That's like, I mean, I definitely partly admire it because I can't do that as a writer. Like, I don't know how to do that. And I love that sensation so much. And also, like, the prose is incredibly beautiful. That when Kirin is coming up out of the river, it describes like the pitch black outside his helmet breaking up into rivulets of red, and you can just immediately see it. Mm-hmm. Like it's so cinematically. It's one of those things where when they adapt it, it's either going to be exactly the way I imagined it, or I'll be like, no, you did it wrong. Mm-hmm. Like I'm almost afraid to see the live adaptation because it seems so clear in my head. And then also, I just think the dehumanization of soldiers by their superiors and by the civi population is like one of the richest topics for literature. And we keep waging wars and genocides and stuff. So it's like we haven't learned the lessons that we've been getting told since the Iliad, if not longer. And I also just fucking love a guy in a mask.
Yeah. So, I mean, along those lines, I think this is going to be extraordinarily hard to adapt and make it work because it's all interiority, right? It's like adapting the Telltale Heart. It's something where, and I don't know if I've ever seen an adaptation of the Telltale Heart. Maybe you could do it. I mean, I'm sure it's been done, but so much of the horror is the interiority, is the sort of his own thoughts and being and his own sensations, and it's really hard on the screen to convey those sensations without having like a narrator over or an internal narration that is sort of spoken out loud to the audience. It's going to be tough. I'm not going to say that they can't do it. It would also not surprise me if they just sort of, I don't know, if they are not able to adapt this part and they just focus on the main story. I doubt it. Maybe, this is such a good piece of work. It's so fucking good that I would be really upset if they don't make an effort to adapt it. But it's incredible. I want to be very clear. This when I read this for the first time, I finished it and I know that I texted you and I texted Steph and a couple other people that I thought that this was Oberon level. This was like as good as any short story that I had ever read, because it was so affecting. We'll get to the ending and I don't want to spend too much time on it, but just a really impressive piece of work. So I get that. Yeah.
Have you read any Philip K. Dick?
A little bit, and it's been a really long time.
It's been a while for me too, but sort of a similar thing where it's like the twist isn't the point. It's not like an M. Night Shyamalan movie where you're just waiting for the twist. It's
right.
The twist like reifies the point of the story. Also, horror cinema has a lot of techniques for portraying internal horror and someone realizing things or sensing things rather than it being outside. But like it takes a deft hand.
Yeah. They're not going to be able to do the opaque face shield, right? Like, but they have to, right? Because Piotr. So I don't know how they're going to do it.
They have to only show Kirin's inside of his helmet.
Yeah, like the really close, like, oh God, what's that Matthew McConaughey movie that everybody likes?
Interstellar?
Thank you. The Interstellar.
I haven't seen it.
Inside the helmet shot. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe they can do it, maybe they can't. I won't be in charge because it sounds hard. So, how about this suit? Can you take it off? Why all the talk about I mean, I feel like the story is really implying that you can't take the suit off because they keep talking about the inevitability of death, the way battle changes you, how you can't go home. And I think that's symbolic of, I think they're talking about what changes in all soldiers, but I think they're really also talking about how the live suit doesn't come off.
I am 100% on the you can never take the suit off train. I've seen other people say that they're not sure. And I honestly don't understand the counter argument, and maybe I've read this too much, or maybe I'm just hard-headed, but I just don't get it. If you read this and like look at the symbolism and look at, you know, how it ends, and you're like, I'm not sure, I just don't get it. Like, sure, maybe the soldiers themselves believe that they can take the suit off, or at least Kirin does at first, but the only real evidence of, you know, oh, you can take the suit off is when the military recruiter Huang says you'll be able to take it off at some point. But like, if that were true, let's say, why wouldn't the military recruiter be an ex-Livesuit soldier? Or why wouldn't Huang, like, bring, you know, good old Jones or, you know, Smith or whoever the fuck who used to be a Livesuit soldier with him? Be like, This is what it looks like. And he doesn't, and we never meet any ex-Livesuit soldiers because they don't exist. They just don't exist. They're not there.
That's another reason they don't have commissioned officers in the live suit.
Fuck. That's such a good point.
Sergeants are just as disposable as grunts.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
You're not going to waste someone who went probably to military academy and officer candidacy school on... They're not disposable. They're the brains of the operation.
Totally. Absolutely. I mean, we in this episode, we went through a bunch of context clues as to why you can't take the suit off already, and we will go through a lot more in the next episode, and that is before we get to, you know, Kirin's ultimate conclusion that the suit was never meant to come off, because that's how this ends, which everybody listening to this knows. But, like, practically, okay, how would taking off the suit work? Set aside Piotr, who for all intents and purposes is dead, but how would it work for Kirin right now, at the end of this part? After he got his foot eaten, they take off the suit, they take off his skin, they take the suit off his skin. Let's say that they can do that. And they take out all of the invasive filaments and tendrils and tentacles that the suit has put deep into his body. Do they do that? Even the one that was into his liver and his upper leg and his vertebrae? How do they do that and keep him alive? I mean, sure. So medical technology at this point is advanced and there are prosthetics for some of that, but like, the human body is the human body. Like, removing something that invasive is going to kill you. The suit is like stage 4 cancer. Sure, yeah, you can cut it out. But what is going to be left when you do? It's not much, and you're going to die.
Even in a world where maybe they have those Bactra tanks, like in Star Wars or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, you're going to put so you're only in for 8 years, and then the military is command and control is investing like millions of dollars in medical recovery on you. No, they're not doing that.
No,
we just found out that they recycle old ships like they're cheapskates. It's mentioned that them dying is not in the budget. It's like, they're not gonna, these people are disposable, they're infantry, like, no, it's not coming off.
Yeah,
I like how you said stage 4 cancer.
Everybody likes stage 4 cancer.
Everybody likes when you mention stage 4 cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, you can't, like, your liver can regenerate, but your spine can't. And
no.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like, let's really think about this, folks. And then why does Kirin believe it for so long? Because soldiers have to believe everything their CO says.
Right.
Basically, like, maybe not if he says he caught a fish the size of Kentucky or whatever, like, you don't have to believe that, but if he says, this is safe, you can trust me, you have to believe him.
He would also feel like a giant fucking chump, right?
Yeah.
Which he kind of does at the end.
Yeah. I mean, everyone believes when they put the suit on that it is coming off.
Sure.
But then even pretty far into his deployment, he still is like, well, someday they're going to take this off of me. And then finally he kind of realizes they aren't. And it's like, that is not something you want to be realizing when you still have your own brain in there.
Nope.
So now it's a prison sentence. If you let yourself realize that, it becomes a prison sentence instead of something he's proud of.
It's like the old black and white film Johnny Get Your Gun, which is based on the song One by Metallica. It's like you're in that situation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. This is another thing I love about this story is how rich it is in references. Like, and the more times you read it, like that is a really that's a much beloved young adult novel, Johnny Got His Gun. And like we were talking about Slaughterhouse-5, there's just so many layers and stuff. And references aren't just, it's not like in now MCU where it's just, actually always MCU, where it's just references to other shit and like the references are the point. This is like, it's layering in all of these war narratives that are also about like losing your humanity, losing your sanity due to war, losing your face, darkness imprisoning you.
Yes. Right. Thank you.
Which comes back to how this is a horror story, and I fucking love horror. I know you're not. Are you? You're not as big a horror guy as me, I think.
I'm kind of not. I mean, I don't like slasher movies a ton. You know, I don't like torture porn at all. But a good, well executed horror movie, especially a psychological horror movie or a horror story, I will get into. And when you mix it with sci-fi, I'm usually all in. You know, Frankenstein is something that I read recently, and like various.
We should cover Frankenstein.
We should. Various versions of Frankenstein. Steph and I read Frankenstein in Baghdad, which also fucked, by the way. It was really good. Set in during the Gulf War, and it's like Frankenstein is the amalgamation of all of a bunch of people who were killed in the war, and like its job is to take revenge on the people who killed him. Fucking good.
I want that.
But yeah, you had mentioned to me that this story gives a lot of hints that the Livesuit is like a coffin. And after rereading it with that in my mind, they absolutely jump out. The discussion of missing not just the feeling of outside air, but sensations of touch and taste and smell. And there's this resignation to your universe being constricted. We see the coffin-sized escape pods. The only feelings they ever mention the entire time are pain and drug-induced euphoria. They can't eat, they can't drink, can't breathe, can't fuck. The only biological need they have is to sleep. And, you know, there's the rub, because in that sleep of death, what dreams may come.
They're already dead when they put it on, they die, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And so they are having these dreams. Like if we want to, you know, port that onto Hamlet's to be or not to be speech, like everything that what he sees is like a dream. And when you read this, when you're on that bridge planet, it feels like a dream narrative, right? Like you walk into a river and it doesn't feel right, and all of a sudden something is tugging on your leg, and like it's a very dream-like narrative throughout, and you're jumping back and forth and things aren't real in terms of the timeline. Yeah. It's very dreamlike when you read it. And so rereading this story with that framework reminded me a bit of a book that I read this last year called Lincoln in the Bardo by George Saunders. I don't know if you've read or heard about this. It was like a popular book, and it's told from the perspective of several ghosts in a graveyard who don't really know that they're dead. The audiobook is very good, has a very good cast. Livesuit is a much better piece of literature. I don't want to necessarily be like, go out and read Lincoln in the Bardo unless you're really into that sort of thing, but
it was really hot when it came out.
It was really hot. It was really popular. It's fine. It's good. There's nothing wrong with it. But it gives off similar vibes, and both books use similar descriptive language about the confines that the characters find themselves in. So, yeah, I mean, it is just reading it and putting yourself in Kirin's head when he's in the suit is just tough. It's claustrophobic. It's rough.
So claustrophobic. What is death but being cut off from everything you knew in life?
Yeah.
And everyone who knows him is dead too. Like that thing where when the last person speaks your name, you're really gone. Everyone who knows Kirin is dead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is spooky as shit.
But you know what's not spooky, Brigid? Super soldiers.
I love them so much.
Well, tell me why. I want to hear about this.
I think I love them. There's so many iterations in fiction, and it's kind of wild because super soldiers do not exist in real life. The real life military is trying to replace humans with drones as much as possible, as quickly as they can. They're not trying to soup up humans to be invulnerable. They're trying to just put machines there in the first place. But we love to think of ourselves as being able to put on, it's a power fantasy. It's like the original super soldier Captain America is like a nerdy 98-pound weakling who gets to fight for the good guys. And I think that's what we like so much in this idea is like, it would be so fucking scary to go to war, obviously. And most people can't do it, but we can fantasize about being one of the good guys. And that's actually really toxic too, because it makes war seem so cool and badass and makes it seem survivable when it's like, absolutely not. And I think it's just a really, like, we won't always probably even have human soldiers. Hopefully we won't always have human soldiers because we'll just get rid of war, but we won't always need them because we're going to have these drones. What would the story be like if Kirin was operating a drone instead of dropping in a suit? I don't know, because I haven't read Ender's Game.
Is that what Ender's Game is about?
Yeah, it's about a war video game that's a real war.
Oh.
I don't know if that's a twist or a spoiler. I've never read it, but I've known that for decades, so sorry if that's a spoiler, everyone.
Yeah, well. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be as compelling because the drone dies, it's like, all right.
Yeah, and I think also the flip side of the power fantasy is like what you have to give up for, like, in the Captain America story, Steve Rogers is uniquely able to handle, he's like the Frodo of the MCU because he doesn't get corrupted. Like,
sure, yeah.
But most people who take the serum end up the worst version of themselves. So it's like there's this huge risk. And in Livesuit, you die. And then other super soldier iterations, like Iron Man, he's dying from the chemicals. I mean, they kind of retcon that later, but at one point, the chemicals he uses for the thing make him not stay alive. And like a Golem is kind of a super soldier, and that's like you're fucking with black magic, you know? Sure.
I mean, you mentioned, if you want to get into fantasy, you can do, I guess Aragorn is not a super soldier necessarily, but he is, I guess, kind of immortal at the same time.
He's like a godlike, is he like
he's a Numenorian, yeah. So I don't know. Steph's going to yell at me if I go too far into this and correct me, but the upshot is like he's super real special, and he's like, I don't know.
He's like how Shadowfax is like way more than a normal horse.
That's right. But I mean, shit, like the Jedi are super soldiers, kind of, right?
Totally, like, yes. Or like samurai. Samurai are kind of what we...
Bobby Draper, like those kinds of archetypes. That makes sense, right?
Yeah. Bobby Draper doesn't have to sacrifice anything to be a super soldier, though. She just
came out of the womb like that.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing with this is, I'm glad that you brought up the super soldier thing, because I think having this novella was necessary to counteract or to give hope. We talked a few times when we were covering The Mercy of Gods about every time we learned a little bit about the great enemy, we were like, oh, thank God. Because you spend all of the Mercy of Gods being like, what the fuck? There's no way anybody could beat these guys. And then we see these Livesuit soldiers who are virtually deathless. And literally that's what they're called in The Mercy of Gods. Occur refers to them as virtually deathless.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that we have these super soldiers, these superheroes, really.
Right.
And I think it's a really good J.S.A. twist to be like, these are horrifying, horrible things that humans have created.
Yes.
As weapons against this horrifying, horrible alien force that we are sort of asserting without necessarily any evidence for this proposition that this is the only way we're going to win.
I totally, I love, you would expect J.S.A. to not just do a Captain America type super soldier story. They're not going to like they're going to do a more, I hate that term, elevated horror, but it's basically like the A24 treatment on it, where it's like, This is a symbol of not to be flippant about it, but like this is taking that familiar genre trope and exploring it to its very depths. And I think I was just thinking about this while you were talking instead of listening to you. No, just kidding.
No, that's important.
How I think the super soldier trope kind of, for me, originates in World War I with like gas masks and literal, like literal fog of war with like the mustard gas, and that's the first time that first time in sort of living memory, I guess, when technology jumped forward so fast that it became absolutely horrifying and horror-inducing, and stripped away all of the like romance of war that had kind of been keeping Europe going at each other's throats for like hundreds of years. And that's the first time, I mean, I guess you could say knights in armor or whatever, but I feel like that's like seeing your fellow humans turn into something else in the battlefield. Or like Berserker Vikings, I guess, are also kind of that. I'm sure there's a bunch of times it's happened in history, but like, you know, our great-grandparents were in World War I, so it's much more recent, and it set everything up. So
I think World War I is the apt comparison, right? So you're talking about, so assuming that this is sort of towards the beginning of the war, right? And you're talking about a technological advance that dehumanizes the conflict and and like takes it to another level. You know, maybe these livesuit soldiers are essentially the equivalent of the machine gun and trench warfare and mustard gas, those things that you mentioned, that turned the battlefield from the Civil War battlefield of everybody lining up and marching together, and which is still horrifying, don't get me wrong, but like it still had that sort of we're all standing together, shoulder to shoulder kind of vibe, to just something that like literally you're crawling through the muck to survive and hopefully try and kill the person on the other side of you. And that's what this feels like. That's what Livesuit feels like. We're going to get into the liberation of Lirabas, which is like a really rough battle scene all around. I think the most, between the Expanse and this narrative, it's the most visceral battle scene that I've ever read J.S.A. writing. And it feels like World War II. I mean, it's hand-to-hand combat. It's not this sort of we're in a ship and we're fighting on the other side and blah blah blah. It's really like rip your guts out kind of shit, and that's tough.
Yeah, like bayonet situation.
Yeah.
Also, the amount that they're being lied to is very reminiscent of World War I.
Yep.
Like those little boys, like 14-year-old boys, were like lying to go off to war, and then having their feet eaten off by rats in fucking trenches. Like, command had no idea what they were doing. They had not nearly enough resources for the kind of war they were trying to fight. Everyone was totally unprepared and rushed into this like headlong thing and destroyed a whole generation from it. And I feel like that's kind of what's happening to these Livesuit guys. They're just like, they have this like noble, like Kirin thinks he's saving people.
Yep.
So are we to understand that this external threat finally united humanity, ending intercultural wars and focusing all military activity on the enemy? We just spent the whole of the Expanse learning that will never happen. Do you think J.S.A. changed their mind, or is humanity not as united in the war effort as Kirin perceives?
It's a great question. So I think the answer is no. I would be very surprised I would be shocked, quite frankly, if J.S.A. wrote the rest of this narrative being like...
Independence Day.
Independence Day. We finally got it. No. I think the answer is no, and I think that's why we get those hints at resistance to the war effort that we're going to talk about in the next episode. I also think that that's why we get the human conflicts that we saw in TMOP, just not just among our group, but also between the groups that we saw. And, I think that any other conclusion, I think we're going to see a lot of diversity of opinion and action among the humans that we meet going forward. And I think one of the fun things about our species in general is that if you ask people, how much of your humanity are you willing to sacrifice in order to save humanity, you are going to get just a fuck ton of different answers along just a whole spectrum of responses. So like everything from all of it, sacrifice all of it, to none of it. I think those are all on the table, and I would imagine that the answers are going to fit neatly along a nice tight little bell curve. And so like I think as we go forward, we're going to see some of that conflict sort of bubble up to the surface even as they fight the Carrick's Empire. Yeah, I don't know, what do you think?
I agree. I think the resistance to the war effort is also potentially going to be kind of big in the upcoming books. And I think that there's a strong implication that command and control isn't just command and control of the military. They're like, or central command or whatever they call them. They're like, I think it might be kind of like a military dictatorship where they just don't have freedom of expression. Like, at one point, what makes me think this is when it's in the next part, but Kirin's talking to somebody in the censorship department, and they're like, no one questions your loyalty, your Livesuit.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, so questioning loyalty is a thing we have to worry about?
Why wouldn't they question Livesuit's loyalty, right? If they had free will, well, we'll get into it, but like if they had free will,
yeah,
they would be super powerful, right? Like they should question their loyalty,
right.
But they don't.
Yeah, I mean, oh, that's a good point. But also I was thinking for civilians, that means their loyalty is always under question. And we don't have, like, well, who knows what's going to happen in America. But normally a sign of you not living in a military dictatorship is that you don't have to express loyalty to your country all the time. Compulsively. Normally. Do you have any other super important things to talk about? I can't believe, I always think we've been talking for 3 hours. It's like
an hour and change. Yeah, we're fine. We're good. No, I don't think so. I think let's cut it off, and then I think we're done. Thanks. That was fun. Come back next time when we wrap up Livesuit. We'll talk silent horses and silent friends. It'll be fun.
Follow us on Buzzsprout or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also send us an email at themercyofpods@gmail.com, and follow us on Instagram and YouTube and Threads at The Mercy of Pods.
And Reddit.
I knew there was another one. Logo is by Matt Howes.
I'm wearing a shirt. Did you see this?
Hey, look at that. That's my husband, by the way.
Nice.
For those of you following along at home. That's why we have the same last name.
You had not mentioned your last name until now, so...
Oh, well, now everybody knows.
Yeah.
That's fine. My Instagram is my... I feel like my full government name is just all over all my internet presence at this point.
Elon Musk has it all and is going to publish it online on Twitter very soon, so that's fine.
Yeah, great. Also, Steph is not just your girlfriend. She's also our meme czar.
She is. That's true. Hi, Steph.
Music is Push the Button by Sid Luscious and the Pants, the best band in the fucking universe. Available wherever...
In the universe.
This universe and others.
Yes.
It's available wherever you get your music. Are you on Tidal?
I have no idea.
Because Metallica is actually not. I found out when I switched to Tidal earlier this week.
Oh, yeah. So I'm in Sid Luscious in the Pants. This is a very incestuous little thing.
It's called a cheap thing.
That's right. Same. So, yeah, I have no idea.
Okay.
I don't know.
Is your membership in the band a secret also?
No.
Like my last name?
No.
Okay.
So, yeah. Come back next time. Brigid, you'll have to remind me. It's been a long time.
Push the button.